The night was thick with silence. Not the peaceful silence of rest, but the heavy, choking stillness that presses against the chest like a weight. The kind of silence that makes men glance over their shoulders, afraid of shadows that do not move. In the marshlands of Virginia, the dogs had gone quiet. The slave catchers, drunk from their earlier victory of dragging a runaway back in chains, laughed and stumbled through the darkened woods. Their torches sputtered in the damp night air, painting their faces in uneven streaks of orange. They thought they owned the night, but something else was out there, watching, waiting. The first sound was a sharp snap, a branch underfoot. One of the men whipped his head around. "Who's there?" His voice cracked, the bravado slipping. Silence answered. Then a flash of white, a shape darting between the trees. Not a face, not a figure, a mask. Pale, blank, terrifying in its emptiness. Before the men could raise their pistols, she was upon them. A woman, slender but strong, wrapped in shadows, her face hidden beneath a rough-cut mask. She moved like smoke, striking hard, striking fast. A torch was kicked aside, plunging the woods into deeper darkness. A knife caught the light just once before it sank into flesh. The men screamed. Their voices carried across the fields, carried into the night, but no one came for them. No one dared. When the chaos subsided, the swamp was quiet again. 2 men lay bleeding into the mud. The others fled, stumbling over roots and branches, tripping in their panic. Their shouts broke into sobs, into prayers, and the mask, that pale, haunting mask, vanished back into the dark. The people whispered of her after that night. The woman who came from nowhere. The woman who struck without warning. The woman who vanished without a sound. The masked woman. But who was she? How does a woman, enslaved and brutalized, rise up to strike terror into the very men who hunted her people? To understand the mask, you must first understand the face beneath it. She was born in chains. Not a chain of iron at first, but the invisible kind, the chain of birth. Her mother, dark-skinned and weary, carried her into the world on a Virginia plantation in the 1820s. The cries of the newborn were drowned by the shouts of overseers and the crack of the whip outside. Her first lullaby was her mother's whisper, "Hush now, don't let them hear you." She grew under the sun, bent over cotton and tobacco plants, her fingers raw, her back aching. She grew up watching her people whipped for working too slowly, beaten for speaking too freely, sold for resisting. She learned early that silence was survival, but silence can also turn into rage. By 12, she was working in the fields. By 15, she had seen friends taken, bodies broken, spirits crushed. By 16, she herself was branded a problem, too proud, too sharp. She did not lower her eyes enough when the overseer passed. She did not bow quickly enough when the mistress of the house demanded her labor. They tried to break her. They tied her to the post. They whipped her until her back was a field of fire, until blood soaked into the dirt beneath her feet. They left her half-conscious, her body trembling, her lips bitten to keep from crying out. But they did not break her. Every lash became a memory. Every scar became a vow. There was one night that marked her transformation. A runaway, a man she had known since childhood, was dragged back in chains. His body was torn from dogs, his spirit beaten from him. The slave catchers laughed as they paraded him before the others, holding him up like a trophy. She stood in the shadows that night, her fists clenched, her teeth grinding. The laughter burned in her ears, and something in her shifted. She would not laugh. She would not cry. She would not beg. She would strike, but she could not do it with her face, for a face can be recognized. A face can be named. So she crafted a mask. It was crude at first. A piece of rough cloth hardened with sap, cut to fit over her features, 2 holes for her eyes, 1 for her breath. Pale, ghost-like, faceless. She wore it at night, when she slipped into the woods, when she became something more than herself. No longer just a woman in chains, but a spirit of vengeance. A ghost with fire in her blood. The raids began in whispers. A torch gone missing. A wagon overturned in the night. A pack of dogs found poisoned before they could be loosed on runaways. Then it grew louder. A rider dragged from his horse. A slave catcher ambushed on the road. A body found by the river, throat cut clean. The white men cursed. They raged. They swore she was not real, just a story to scare them into caution. But when the sun went down, when the woods grew thick and the marshes groaned with night sounds, they checked the corners of their vision. They held their guns tighter. They jumped at every shadow. And the enslaved? They whispered her name with hope. The masked woman. The one who struck back. The one who made the hunters fear the hunted. She was their secret fire, their whispered legend, their proof that resistance was possible even in the darkest of times. But legends are not born without blood. And the masked woman left plenty of it in her wake. As the months of 1851 stretched on, her raids grew bolder, more violent. Slave catchers went missing and never returned. Men whispered of her mask glowing in the torchlight, her knife flashing like a phantom's tooth. She was not everywhere, but she might be anywhere. The fear spread, and with fear came the promise of retribution. The night no longer belonged to the hunters. It belonged to her. By the summer of 1851, the masked woman was no longer just a rumor whispered in the quarters. She was a storm that broke without warning, a shadow that bled into every corner of the Virginia countryside. Her raids grew daring. Her strikes grew louder. Her name spread like smoke on the wind. One night, a pack of slave catchers gathered near the marshes, laughing as they boasted about the bounties on her head. The bravest among them claimed he would string up the masked woman himself, nail her mask to the courthouse door as proof. He didn't make it home. His horse returned at dawn, riderless. Its saddle was stained with blood. In the woods nearby, the man's body hung from a tree, swaying gently, the pale mask tied around his throat like a trophy. Word traveled fast. The masked woman wasn't just killing. She was sending messages. The raids took on rhythm. Slave patrols vanished. Dogs refused to track her scent. Wagons overturned mysteriously on the night roads. She became a phantom, a curse. Every time a torch went out, men swore she was near. The overseers muttered of witchcraft. The catchers muttered of demons. The enslaved smiled when they heard. For the first time, their oppressors trembled in the shadows. But the masked woman was no demon. She was flesh, blood, bone, and her past still burned inside her. Every time she struck, she remembered the scars on her back. The whip's bite, the laughter in the air, the overseer's voice calling her too proud, too dangerous. She remembered the runaway dragged back in chains, the dogs tearing flesh, the sound of his screams under the stars. Every blow she dealt was for them. Every drop of blood spilled was an answer to the silence they had been forced to swallow. Her raids brought hope, and hope, like fire, spreads quickly. Men whispered that she was more than mortal, that she could not be killed. Women told their children that the mask was blessed, that it turned fear into strength. Young men who once bowed their heads began to look up again, their eyes sharp with defiance. The masked woman had become something greater than herself. She had become a symbol, but symbols draw attention, and attention draws danger. The planters and patrols banded together. A bounty was raised. Men rode out in larger groups, rifles polished, dogs hungry and snarling. They carried torches, guns, chains. They swore they would end her reign before the autumn harvest. They did not know the land like she did. They did not know the marshes' secrets. They did not know the silence she could turn into a weapon. There was one night, late in September, when her legend reached its peak. The patrol had grown arrogant again. 12 men strong, they rode the night roads in formation, torches raised high, pistols at their sides. They joked about her, shouted into the dark, "Come on out, masked woman. Let's see if you're real." They did not laugh for long. From the tree line, arrows flew. Yes, arrows, fashioned crudely, but tipped sharp enough to pierce. The first struck a horse, sending it crashing sideways. The second buried itself in a man's throat, silencing his jeer forever. The patrol scattered, torches flailing, and in the chaos, she appeared, mask pale against the night, knife flashing in her hand. She darted in and out of the circle like a phantom, cutting throats, slashing tendons, vanishing before a shot could be fired. The woods erupted into screams. Men fell. Horses bolted. The swamp drank deep. When dawn broke, the road was littered with bodies. And carved into the dirt, written in ash, was a single word: free. By now, she was more than feared. She was hunted. Militias formed. Bounties grew. Newspapers whispered of a savage woman leading raids in the Virginia countryside. Some painted her as a monster, others as a warning, and yet, no one could find her. No one knew her true name. No one even knew her face. She was a mask and nothing more. But even legends can bleed, and every raid carried risk. One night, a patrol caught sight of her as she fled across the riverbank. A bullet grazed her shoulder, tearing cloth, staining the mask with her blood. For a moment, she stumbled. For a moment, she was just a woman again, breathing hard, gripping her wound. But she did not fall. She disappeared into the marsh, as she always did. The catchers swore they would find her trail. They swore she was close. They swore she was mortal, after all. Inside the quarters, whispers grew heavy. Some feared the attention she brought. For every slave catcher she killed, punishments grew harsher for those left behind. Overseers lashed harder. Dogs were loosed more often. Chains clinked louder at night. Some asked in quiet voices, was she protecting them? Or was she dooming them? But none dared say it too loud. For to speak against her was to speak against the only flame they had left. The masked woman pressed on. Her raids became fewer, but sharper. She struck like lightning, then vanished. She left no trace, save for the mask glimpsed in the torchlight, the blood in the dirt, the silence that followed. By the end of 1851, her legend had outgrown her body. She was everywhere. She was nowhere. She was feared. She was worshipped. And the hunters, they were closing in. Her mask had become a curse to the men who hunted her, and a prayer to the enslaved who whispered her name. But curses don't last forever, and soon the night would close in on her too. The road was slick with rain the night she disappeared. Some say they heard her boots pounding against the earth. Others swear they caught a glimpse of her mask glinting in the moonlight. A whisper, a flash, then nothing. No body was found. No grave was dug. No rope ever touched her neck. She was gone. But her shadow? Her shadow remained. By 1851, the masked woman had become more than a nuisance. She was a symbol, a curse upon the slave catchers, a whisper of hope for the enslaved. And the South hated her for it. Plantation owners pooled rewards. Posters nailed to trees promised gold for her capture, dead or alive. Posses with bloodhounds scoured the woods at night, the dogs baying under a black sky. But the woods belonged to her. She had carved secret paths through the swamps, cut tunnels through cane fields, marked trees with hidden signs. What they saw as wilderness, she knew as home. And each time they closed in, she slipped through their fingers. One night, in the spring of 1851, she struck harder than ever before. A gang of catchers, 5 men in long coats, dragged a young boy through the mud. He was shackled, crying out for his mother. His family screamed behind locked doors. The catchers laughed. One raised a whip, and that's when she came. The mask appeared in the torchlight, a pistol in one hand, a blade in the other. Her voice cut like iron. Let him go. The men sneered. One fired his musket. The shot tore bark from a nearby tree. She lunged. The blade flashed. The pistol cracked. Chaos erupted. When it ended, 2 men were on the ground. The others fled into the night, their torches scattering sparks across the field. The boy was free. But her war had crossed a line. The South could not let her live. And so the whispers tell us someone betrayed her. Some say it was a man she trusted, promised money for his starving children. Others claim it was a woman forced under torture, giving up the meeting place in exchange for her daughter's safety. The truth is lost, but betrayal is always the same. They set the trap in a hollow of the woods, a cabin with a flicker of firelight. They waited in silence, muskets cocked, ropes ready. When she entered, mask still on, pistol drawn, the doors slammed shut. Gunfire split the night. Shouts echoed through the trees. Then, nothing but silence. When they rushed inside, she was gone. Some say she slipped through the floorboards, disappearing into a tunnel dug long before. Others believe she was struck down that night, her body buried in secret, her mask burned in the fire. But the most enduring tale says this, that she ran. Through the swamp, through the rain, the dogs howling at her heels. And as the dawn broke, she vanished into the mist, never seen again. The masked woman became a ghost story. To the slave catchers, she was a nightmare. Men whispered her name in fear, claiming to see her mask glimmering in the trees before ambushes. To the enslaved, she was a savior. Mothers told their children, when the night is darkest, she will come. Into history, she became something else entirely. A question, a riddle, a figure wrapped in shadow. Was she killed? Or did she escape to freedom, vanishing into the north under a new name? Whether she lived or died, it didn't matter. The masked woman had become more than flesh and bone. She was a story, a symbol, proof that even in chains, rebellion burned bright. Her mask was the spark. And every time a captive slipped their shackles, every time a family fled into the night, every time a chain snapped open, her legend grew. In the decades that followed, the Civil War tore the nation apart. Freedom came, though late and bloody. And yet, whispers of her mask still lingered. Travelers spoke of a woman in black, seen on foggy nights, standing at the edge of the woods, a pistol gleaming in her hand, a mask hiding her face. She never spoke, never moved. But those who saw her said the message was clear. Keep running, keep fighting, never bow. She was never meant to be remembered, never meant to have a name. But sometimes silence speaks louder than memory. And sometimes a mask tells the truth no chains can hide. In 1851, one woman vanished, but her shadow still walks with us.